between it going live on everywhere except for Instagram. So I am working on us getting the Instagram live. But in the meantime, here we go. Fabulous. All right. So welcome everyone to another fabulous, the inspiration behind the stories. I am here with Roberta Gates. She is the author of the collection. I am going to say this wrong, and so you can completely hand slap me, please do. Number 12, Rue Sainte-Catherine and Other Stories.
That's pretty close. It's number 12, Rue Sainte-Catherine and Other Stories.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, fabulous. And we are here to basically talk about, what were the inspirations behind this incredible collection. So we're gonna just jump right into it. What was the moment that made you say that I absolutely have to write this?
Well, the inspiration for this book came from a visit that my husband and I made to Lyon, France. And that was the city that was known as the City of the Resistance during World War II. And they have a wonderful history center there. It's called the Resistance and Deportation History Center. And it features resistance people, and it also features Gestapo people. And the thing that impressed me most about this museum was they were running in their theater a videotape of the Klaus Barbie trial, which took place in 1987. And I remember going back 3 different times so that I could see as much of this video as I could. And of course, at that time, 1987, they tried to find as many victims as they possibly could who would be able to testify. So I was listening to all these testimonies, and it was just so fascinating and so interesting that I knew I wanted to write about this when I got home.
Wow. My gosh. Now, did you have an I was going to jump ahead, but I'll stick to our game plan.
Okay.
So what really first sparked the initial stories?
Well, it was really, just kind of having access to all those stories because, the trial transcript was available. That gave me a lot of information. But I have to say, I've always been interested in World War II ever since I can remember. And I'm also a Francophile. I took French in high school. I took French in college. And I don't know, those two things just kind of came together. And, I thought, yes, this is what I want to write about.
Wow. So why do you feel this may be the right collection to share now?
Well, honestly, I wasn't even really exactly thinking of having a story collection. I was just writing stories kind of for the last 10 years. And the first one that I wrote, which is called number 12, Rue Sainte-Catherine, that was the first story that I wrote. That was about Klaus Barbie and the foreign Jews that he rounded up at number 12. And that was the first story. And I really got kind of interested. I just thought, okay, well, let's see what else I can write about. So, I was just kind of writing one story at a time and getting them published. And then at some point, I sort of thought to myself, well, I've written 9 stories and they're all about the same main character, Klaus Barbie. I mean, some of them have other characters that come in as point of view characters, but they're all about Klaus Barbie, and they pretty much run from the time he was a child until, after his death, actually. So I thought, well, maybe this could be a collection. And I guess you thought the same thing.
That might be.
But it was kind of an accidental sort of thing.
Well, why don't share that? Share the like how that accident came to be.
Well, I was writing, I've written stories for a long time. And, I was writing, the kinds of stories that people write, family dramas, things that kind of, came up um, with memories from your childhood or whatever. Just, I was writing just a lot of different stories. But I did keep coming back to Vichy France during World War II and Klaus Barbie because I think, partly because I read so much about him, because he was one of the last Nazi war criminals to be tried. There were actually a lot of journalists that had written about him. So, unlike a lot of other similar characters, I could actually find out information. And I think I just kept kind of turning it over in my head and trying to figure out, you know, how how does someone who starts out as a sensitive child who thinks he wants to be a priest, how
Mm,
does he end up being the butcher of Lyon? Now,
mm,
that's the kind of question there probably is no answer to ever, but I just kept thinking about it and it interested me enough so that I kept putting him together with other characters, other historical characters, and just trying to figure out what made this guy tick.
mm. Oh, I love it. So, and actually just you pleasantly leaded us, led us to my next question. So, what what were the kinds of questions that you were obsessed with as you were mulling through this, as you were crafting this incredible collection?
Well, one thing I was thinking about is, you know, these things don't happen all at once, they
Mm,
happen gradually. And in Klaus Barbie's case, he started out being a snitch for the Catholic youth. This was when he was a teenager in high
mm.
school. And he, I guess, did a good job, and so to speak. And the local Nazi group became interested in him, and they kind of greased his path into the SS. And one thing that I have discovered through my reading is that, especially early on, the SS was the elite group. The SA, which was the brown shirts, they were kind of the rabble rousers. They went out on the street and had fights with the communists. But the SS were much more elegant and they attracted some of the aristocracy. And for a lot of people who were out of work and suffering from, the devaluation of the German mark,
Mm.
it was, it felt like a career opportunity. But he was a young guy. He was like 18, 19
My
when he
God.
sort of, yeah, when he got kind of pulled into this, when he was pulled into the SS.
Mm,
So, in a way, it seems kind of tragic because it's too bad that there wasn't some other, um, something else that could have led him in a different direction.
mm, mm. Wow. Now, you've already talked about this a little bit, but I don't know if you would elaborate a little more. So, who are these stories about?
Well, these stories are about Klaus Barbie, and the
Mhm.
first story is when he's a child. The next story is when he's a teenager, and then we see him in his job as chief of the Gestapo in Lyon. So there are one, two, three, four stories that take place during wartime. And then there is a story that is set in South America because he eventually fled to Bolivia. So there's a story that's set in Bolivia. And then there's a story of him when he's an old man awaiting trial and he's in prison. And
Mm.
then the final story is actually a little bit different from the others because it involves someone that was very close to him, um, who I don't want to give away that I don't want to give away the ending of the story, but someone that didn't really know who he was or who he had been.
Ah.
So this is a person that is trying to discover the truth.
Mm. Wow. Oh my goodness. Um, so, and for those who may not be familiar, so what's at stake as things, I would say go wrong, but I don't know if for purposes of the story, go right.
Yeah, I know, I know. Well, I think that the stakes are huge. I think that, as I said, he was a sensitive child. He was focused on being a priest for at least several years. So I honestly think that, it's his soul that is at stake.
Oof.
And I have a theory. I don't think it's unique, but um, I sort of believe that those who practice cruelty do just as much damage to themselves as
Mm.
to their victims. And
Agreed.
yeah, as Nietzsche wrote, when you gaze long into the abyss gazes into you.
Mm. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now I was going to say, so well, what kind of emotional ride can a reader expect as they go through this incredible collection?
Well, this is not a comfortable book. And
Nuh-uh.
no, no, it's not a feel-good book, I'm afraid. And I should probably warn readers that it contains both violence and sex,
Mm,
but I don't think either of them are gratuitous. Um,
no, not
but
at all.
there is plenty of tension. Sometimes it's the kind of tension where someone who's been arrested, we don't know if they're going to be able to get away or not. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. And then, of course, there's also the question of whether or not justice will be served.
Mm. Hmm. Actually, that's a huge question.
It's a very huge question, very huge.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Um, of all of the stories, of all of the topics that were broached, what do you feel was the hardest for you to write?
Well, I think technically the hardest story to write was the first one that I wrote, which was about the raid that was made on February 9th, 1943 at number 12 Rue St. Catherine. And this was the location of a Jewish welfare agency
Mm,
that had been set up under the auspices of Vichy France, so it was allowed. And they served primarily foreign Jews or Jews that were stateless. They'd fled to France from Germany or Romania or Poland or wherever. And this was a
mhm,
place they could come and they could get ration books, they could get allotments so that they could rent apartments, they could get medical care. Um, and it was supposed to be off limits to the Gestapo because, as I said, it was sponsored by the state. But Barbie decided that, it might serve his purposes toward getting a promotion if he brought in the people that he could ambush that particular day at this spot. So there were about 100 people, a little fewer than 100, who were arrested that day.
mm,
And I had all their stories because of the transcript from the trial. And I really, all of the stories were just very compelling. But, I had to figure out a way to narrow my focus to just a few of the people who were there that day and what happened to them. And yet, at the same time, reference some of these other people who were also there. So
mm,
that was really kind of a difficult thing to do. And it ended up being a 50-page story. It probably could have
Wow.
been even longer, but but there was a lot to tell. And some of the people that were rounded up that day, they sacrificed themselves so someone else might be released. But there were also people who betrayed like a brother or another relative so that they could escape, and the other person unfortunately could not. So, I mean, it was just it was kind of a microcosm of responses to a
Wow.
situation that was very, very tense.
Wow. What a lovely opening to really set that stage of the larger collection.
Yeah, it is. It is the title story for a reason, because I think it is the one that is is the broadest.
Oh my goodness, fabulous. Now, where were you personally in your life as you were actually writing the stories and as they were taking shape?
Well, at that point, I was newly retired. I
Mm,
retired early, and I was just beginning to really concentrate on my writing. So that's where I was.
wow. Oh, well, actually, that's great because then you're getting both a personal fulfillment. Uh,
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I
that's
did enjoy writing that story quite a bit.
oh, wonderful. Now, do you feel as though writing this collection changed you in any capacity? And do you feel as though this was like a lead in for additional works?
Oh, for sure. I don't know if it's changed me in any particular way, but the question that I keep asking myself every time I return to this particular subject is, how would I have behaved if I was in this situation? Would I have behaved well, or would I have been an onlooker, or would I have done something heroic? And, the answer is I just don't know.
Wow. Wow.
But it is a question that, I do ask myself, if I had been there, what would my response have been?
Mm. And honestly, because you broached that for you as you were writing it, I feel as though it was a lovely entree for r- any reader
Hmm.
to experience those same questions because they're like lightly implied within each story.
Sure, sure. I think so too. And another thing, to go back to that particular story, the title story, one thing that story did kind of teach me is that, some of the people that were, taken captive that day were let go. And, it didn't seem lots of times as if there was much reason, much rationale for it. Um, in one case, it was a case of shared love of music. In another case, it was a crying baby.
Mm,
But some people were let go. And it did kind of make me realize that, luck and chance does play an important part in our lives. And it also kind of taught me that human behavior is unpredictable. You
mm,
don't know what somebody is going to do. Just because they have a job title or, whatever, they might do something surprising.
mm. Wow. That's a great an excellent point. And especially in our currently tumultuous times,
Oh,
I think
gosh,
we're
yes.
seeing that frequently in our current, uh, well, I was going to say news, but I mean in general.
Oh, yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely, definitely.
Is there a character that you felt was the most challenging for you to write and why?
Okay. Well, that was Solange in
Mm,
the story Bully Boys. And in France, every defendant is examined by a psychiatrist before their trial. And in Barbie's case, three psychiatrists interviewed him. and they were all men. But I thought to myself, wouldn't it be interesting if it was a woman instead?
Mm.
So this story is told from a woman psychiatrist's point of view. And it was probably the most difficult for me because almost all the other characters in the book do have a historical basis, in fact. But with Solange, I had to make her up from scratch.
Mm.
And I also thought, well, I could complicate the story possibly by giving her an ex-husband who had been very abusive.
Ooh.
So that way I would be able to contrast institutional violence that's sanctioned by the state with intimate abuse that is more personal and more hidden, but still has a lot of overlaps with the institutional violence.
Wow. My goodness. Is there anything that almost didn't make it into the book?
Oh,
Why?
gosh. Yes, yes.
And
Well, okay, that was the story collaboration. And I know that some people might say that it's an X-rated story.
oh boy.
But some people might like that, some people might not. But okay, it makes an important point, I think, and it was actually a story that was nominated for a Pushcart Prize.
Mm.
So I was pleased with that. It tells the story, which is true, of a French woman who instigates an affair with Barbie in order to protect her Jewish husband. Now, she thinks that she can control her feelings, that, this is just business between the two of them.
Mhm.
But she finds out that quite the opposite is true. So this story kind of operates as an allegory. France was the only occupied country to actually officially collaborate with the Nazis. And I think that the businessmen and the merchants and the propagandists and everybody else thought that they could do business with the Nazis and they wouldn't lose their self-respect. It was just business.
Mhm.
But in reality, of course, their collaboration left an indelible stain on their history. So that is what I was trying to say in the story. And that's why it's called collaboration.
Wow. Now, is there anything that you did keep out of the collection that you, in retrospect, wish that you would have kept in?
No, no, it's all there.
Okay.
You got it all.
Got it. Okay. Now, who do you feel will fall hardest for the collection?
Well, I think anybody who's interested in World War II. And if you like France, so much the better.
Honestly, you do such a phenomenal job of the not just the physical intimacy, but the emotional intimacy, that if someone really wants to dive into that kind of complex, really truly character driven, emotional driven collection, then they should definitely check this out.
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely. My theory is that there are really no monsters. I mean,
Mm.
I think we talk about Nazis as if they were, you know, the last evil regime in the world, but we know, that even during the Gulf War, there were CIA agents that were doing enhanced interrogation at black sites.
Mhm.
And, we don't know too much about that because I guess we won the war. I guess. I don't know. But it was secret. And they went home to their families at night. And, as far as their neighbors could tell, they were ordinary people who mowed their lawns on the weekends and went to church or whatever. So, I mean, this isn't I guess what I'm saying is this is not an isolated um, period in history. It's something that is still with us that
Mm.
we have to guard against. And I do kind of see this book as a cautionary tale. Um, when the book came out in 2024, you know, well, he wasn't president at the time, but Donald Trump was running for the presidency. And, you know, and at about the same time, there was kind of that rightward tilt in many places around the world, and still is. And I just think this book is kind of a reminder of how bad things can get.
Oh, agreed. Agreed, which is what makes it necessary. Period.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I hope it does. I hope any reader who reads this book has some questions that they will think about after they finish the book.
And I felt as we were going through it, at least for me, it felt like each story within it allowed the reader to do just that. To at the end of it, it's almost as if your emotions and your thoughts like explode with, my gosh, like here are all these emotions and feelings and realizations, for lack of a better term, that you get to dive into and really experience.
Well, I didn't want to make the reader have to spend all his time with Klaus Barbie. So in a lot of the stories, I have other point of view characters, which I think I did mention. But for instance, in, oh gosh, now the name of the story is escaping me, on special assignment, That takes place in Paris, and it's a confrontation between Klaus Barbie and a British spy named Josephine. And she was a real character, and this was a real event. I kind of expanded it to make it bigger. But we spent a lot of time with her. And, it's interesting, I think, because, she's British, but she's in France. So she's observing the French, and she has to kind of use every resource that she has available to her to kind of deal with Klaus Barbie. She is able to outsmart him. And as I said, this is a real incident, and she really did, manage to get away. But I thought it was kind of important that the reader know what she was thinking and feeling as well as Barbie. So that happens in a lot of stories where I just switch over to another person in the story and talk about their feelings and what they're dealing with.
And which was fabulous because it created a balance to it that really enables the reader to become fully engrossed in that, not just the story, but even the perspectives of the characters.
Very well put. Yes, yes. And in collaboration, where I just have two characters, Marianne, the mistress, and Marianne, by the way, is the symbol of France, so that was the name for her, and Barbie. I just have those two characters, the man and the woman, but I go back and forth between the two of them throughout the entire story. And, I think it's just kind of interesting. Well, it was interesting to write for me, just to, okay, what is she thinking now? What is he thinking? What does each want from the other? And I think it just makes it more interesting if you can kind of move around from character to character.
Ah, yes, yes. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Is there anything that readers have come back to you and said, oh my gosh, I totally was not experiencing that?
Well, there are a number of people that just couldn't believe that I chose to write about a Nazi war criminal. But I don't know. Honestly, the bad boys of literature are usually a lot more interesting than the heroes. I mean, think about Jane Eyre. There's Rochester, and then there's who is that other person? St. John. We can't even remember his name. He's so blah. And and then in Wuthering Heights, there's Heathcliff, and he's way more interesting than Edgar Linton. So I I can understand why, not everybody would want to read this book, but I honestly think that if anybody truly picked it up and started from the beginning and gave it serious thought as they were reading it, I think they would get something out of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, if someone was actually reading, let's say, even just the first 20 pages, what do you feel keeps them going? What kind of feedback have you gotten in terms of that?
Well, I would say it's the vibrancy and particularity of the narrative. One of my writing instructors said it's important to treasure your character's smallest behaviors, and that's what I've tried to do. I remember taking the first story, which is called. Oh, I must be very nervous because I am forgetting the names of my stories.
Oh,
But but the first story in the book, which is about Klaus as a 7-year-old, um, you know, I remember taking that to a workshop, and it was a workshop with um, someone who is pretty, published several books. And he said about this story, which was really just about the two parents and the little boy, if I was in a bookstore and I read this much of the book, I would definitely buy the book because I'd want to read the rest of it. So I thought that was a good,
oh,
I thought that was encouraging.
oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. We all want that kind of feedback.
Oh yeah, right, right.
Now, is there a specific mood you feel as though a reader should go into it where they'll get the most out of it, if that makes sense?
Well, I think just go with the flow.
Mm,
Margaret Atwood said that in her books, there's nothing so outlandish that it hasn't actually happened in history. She took all her incidents from history. And the same is true in my book.
mm,
It is very closely based on fact. And I just think it's important to remember that we are surrounded by, especially right now,
mm,
things that could go very, very wrong politically and morally. And I just think it's important to bear in mind that we can't just really stand on the sidelines and just hope for the best.
mm,
We have to do what we can to intervene.
mm.
So I I hope my book goes partway toward making that statement.
Oh, agreed. Absolutely. Now, in one sentence, why should someone pick up this book? I think you already said it, but if you could restate it
In one sentence.
in one sentence.
Okay. Well, war puts everybody under extreme pressure. And I
Mm.
think it's a truism, but I think it really does bring out the best and the worst in people. And that's what you'll find in this book.
Ah, very well put. And for anyone who's watching, if you go ahead and you look in the chat, um, there's a link to Roberta's collection. The ebook is available through the month of March for Women's History Month for 99 cents. You can also find the other forms of the collection as well. And again, as always, Roberta, it is always such a distinct pleasure to have an opportunity to chat with you. And thank you again for sharing the insights of the inspirations behind these incredible stories.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.